You can't judge somebody based on their money or their weight, because it fluctuates the rest of your life.
We had this comment come in on our channel, and that is, the only way to become a filmmaker is to make friends with rich people. What's your reaction to this?
Depends on what filmmaker you want to be. You know, if your goal is to make movies with millions of dollars, you're probably not going to make a very good movie. I mean, look at how many movies come out for millions of dollars and there's no soul behind them, no comprehension of it. It can be an incredibly expensive art form. There can be a side of it that is really a high amount of money that needs to be spent. But also, you can make a lot of films for no money. Look at, what's that film? Shoot, the one that came out with Shudder, Skinamarink. That movie was made for almost nothing, and then suddenly it went on this giant, theatrical run. I feel like if you start to, I have a lot of friends who have wanted to make films and never went out to actually do it because they have this great idea and they're like, it's going to cost $5 million. And I say, well, hold on a minute. Why do you think it's going to be $5 million? You've never even budgeted a movie before. Why did you attach this price point? And I started to realize that a lot of people attach price points to stuff that cause them to not be able to do it. And I think filmmaking in a large respect is about overcoming obstacles, and financial sides of filmmaking are just obstacles. So don't create an obstacle before you really start the process. And then also, I am a huge believer in the idea of just keep showing up. I relentlessly just kept showing up to every movie I've ever made. Like, for instance, Devoted in Time, this new film I'm doing with the painter Rob Pryor. We're shooting the whole thing on the Bolex 16mm film. And that film, for the first month, there was no money involved. I wasn't able to shoot any film yet. And I showed up every day to the studio and did audio interviews. Every single day, I just kept going back and going back and going back. And eventually it just kind of snapped together. A donor put some money into the picture who doesn't even own any points on it because they said they had a dream and realized that this needed to be made. And my producing partner, Drew Harwood, he was able to bring that money to the table, and we got all the film stock. The fridge is chock full of film now, and we've shot over an hour of material on the Bolex. And that goes back to the whole financial side. It's don't create limitation before you go out to bat. Go out there and try to hit the ball as best you can, and you never know. Swing away, and it might hit it over the fence.
Here's another quote. We don't want to be poor, but we don't want to sell out.
Well, when I was making Clowning, I was offered $250,000 to not use my best friend as the lead in the movie, and I turned down that money and got the investors got the executive producer to go out and find other investors to bring in actually less money, but enough to make the movie, and was able to make the movie with my friend. And a huge facet to that, and why I bring that up in a quick manner, because it's a very large story. But the reason I bring that up is if I would have replaced him and made that movie with a different actor, it probably could have landed that movie with a bigger company as a distributor, could have gotten a theatrical release maybe, perhaps, depending on the individual involved. But I had such a beautiful experience with this person who I had been making movies with back in Ohio before I moved to Hollywood, and was able to make that first movie. And I would never take that back in a million years. And I didn't make any money off of making that movie, actually, when I went out to do it. I waived all those fees and put all the money in front of the camera as I could. But I learned so much from making that movie that now I know so much more about working with crews and production designers and things that I might not have really known to that degree. So, is there a way that you can sell out making movies in Hollywood? It's obviously a possibility. Who wouldn't want to make the Marvel movie? Who wouldn't want to make the movie for Disney? I wouldn't look down on anyone's choices. I think we all decide to go a particular direction in making movies and taking money. But I think you might learn less about yourself if you take the easy route. Take the hard route and maybe more is revealed within you. And if you take the easy route, maybe you don't get as much on a personal level, perhaps.
Okay. Well, just to play the opposite. So what if someone says, you know what, I don't need to learn anything more about myself. I need a nice car. I need to pay my bills. I want to take my significant other out to nice meals. And I want to be paid for my time.
Well, I would say that individual is probably not going to be a close friend of mine. More than likely, I would have to say that in life, something that's incredibly important is what you're doing every day, right? And if its sole purpose is for money, well, all your money could be gone like this. You know, a very intelligent individual once said to me, you can't judge somebody based on their money or their weight, because it fluctuates the rest of your life. And that's incredibly true. You know, you could have, I mean, look at all the celebrities who have had millions and then they've gone bankrupt, you know, decades later. And I think it just goes to show that, and also how many celebrities or wealthy individuals are super depressed. You know, I mean, so I do feel pretty strongly that your goal probably, no matter what your background is, whether you want to make movies or be a Wall Street banker, honestly, if it's about objects for you, you're gonna be a little lost, I think, emotionally. And inevitably, I love a lot of things, you know. I mean, it's not like I don't appreciate, you know, I like having a rougher car though, because sometimes, you know, you get in your car, your door's open, and then it like the car goes down some when someone else gets in, and it hits the curb, and you hear it go as they shut the door. I never have an emotional reaction to that. I'm like, no big deal. And I kind of like that, you know, someone hits my car a little. I have this one thing where somebody hit the side of my car and they didn't have insurance, so they gave me a couple $1,000s, and I actually didn't have money for rent the next month, so they paid for my rent and had no idea. I was so grateful. And then nowadays, I look at that little bit of damage and I'm like, you know, if someone came up to me and they're like, I'll give you $2,000 to let me hit your car, I'd let them do it. I mean, that's such little damage. So more possessions, I think, causes us to put more emotional instability towards things that might not matter. And you're probably losing something in your life. But I mean, look, everything's easier said than done. You know, say you grew up in a household where parents, their sole thoughts were on possessions. Maybe it's kind of ingrained in your DNA to care so much. And I mean, one thing that really frightens me is the fact that Instagram and these social media outlets cause children to be so hyper aware of the way that they look. And that's frightening, because now there's new disorders that are happening where some kids will post what they're wearing before they go to school, and if they don't get a certain number of likes, they don't want to leave to go to school.
Oh, wow.
And so I feel like we're in this kind of weird place where we have to comprehend how to deal with these new situations we're putting ourselves in the middle of. You know, so everything's easier said than done, and there's no reason to look down on anybody's choices. But it is incredibly important to realize that the 5 people that you keep in your life, your 5 main people, end up being a facet of who you are. So if you're really disinterested in possessions, then make sure the people you keep around you probably aren't the most possessive types. Yeah.
What's your thought that your art may never give you the money and the lifestyle that you want?
Well, I feel like if you're really creating art from within yourself, that itself will cultivate a particular lifestyle. I don't think you should be motivated by trying to use your art to make money, because you may be let down first create art, find your voice. Why are you making things? Allow that to catapult you forward. And if you do that and you do it selflessly enough and consistently keep creating, I do think you end up being seen. We have this kind of notion today where we all want to be seen in such a, so badly. We want to be seen. And if you focus on that element, your art will probably fall to the wayside because there's essence. There's something so beautiful that we're all attached to each other, that we're all from this similar universe, that we're all living beings right here. And like, look at Bob Dylan in the beginning of his career. He was creating this music and he was writing these things that he says he has no idea how he wrote them. But maybe at that moment he was so clear, his antenna was so wide open for these messages to hit him that he facilitated it and he put it out into the ether. And through creating that, it turned him into the artist that he was. So I create these films and inevitably I'm sure that they've punctuated my life in particular ways that I probably can't even fully comprehend how it's shifted me in certain avenues. But there's definitely a side of this that you can't create your art in the hopes that it becomes your career, because I believe thoroughly that if you focus too heavily on that, then it'll maybe stifle what you're even creating. Because that's a scary thought, the idea of this has got to pay for everything. Well, we all have to pay rent, right? We all have to pay bills. But if you start creating and immediately want that to catapult into some kind of quick money, you won't really have gotten to the place of having a voice or even understanding how you can portray your voice or how you can get into people's heads. A lot of times people nowadays kids say they want to be influencers. What does that even mean? A large facet here is we've got all these people with 1 million followers, right? So they feel famous, but they're not. Who knows who they are? Very few people knows who most of these people are. And I have a friend in the recording industry where they'll take a new artist, they'll buy them 2 million subscribers, and then that 2 million subscribers, well, that'll fall away over time. But what happens is there's this crazy thing that takes place where when people see they have 2 million followers, they'll start following them. So the 2 million will dial back to about 600,000 or so, and that'll be real followers. And it's that people actually started to believe this person was well known. And then even with those 600,000 people, who are they? There's billions of people on the planet, so that's not real fame. How back in the day, Tom Cruise, in the 90s when he was famous, well, he was famous all over the world. Michael Jackson, that's fame. Just to say like some real definitive names that I'm sure are known all over the place, all over the planet. But now we live in this world where having 200,000 followers on Instagram is giving people some kind of feeling of, oh, I've done it. I'm where I'm supposed to be. And it's like, no, that's a lost sensation. I fear Instagram disappearing for those people. Where would they find their worth in all of it? So to create art and have that initially get you to a particular place is a beautiful side effect to doing it selflessly.